Hello, and welcome back to episode 4, where we will be tackling imposter syndrome and thinking less why and more why not when it comes to opportunities. This is episode 4 in the Black History Month podcast for the Golden Thread. We look forward to hearing your views and comments, so please do comment below if there's anything in particular you want to contribute. Isn't that so? The name for that, imposter syndrome, isn't it? Right?
It is.
That
it is.
feeling
It is.
of, do I really belong here? And what is it that, and I think everybody goes through that at some point, even who, that stereotypical kind of person that we think, that they think they're the best, and so they'll never question it. Actually, I think everyone has this little bit of imposter syndrome when they're in new positions. Lucy, I'll ask you, because you said that you've probably got the most experience, but how do you get out of that? How do you get out of that mindset?
Yeah, it's very hard, isn't it? I don't think you ever get out of that mindset, and I don't think it's always a bad thing. I've always said, you challenge, you're self-referencing, you're always trying to do the best. I don't think that has been a bad thing for me, actually. And it has certainly made me think more deeply, think more about the impact of myself on other people than I may have done if I didn't have that added sort of, level of imposter syndrome and difference. I think we talk about who are your role models. I hate to say this because it sounds a bit corny, but mine is probably my daughter, because she doesn't think why, she thinks why not.
Yeah.
And slowly but surely, and she'll have a go at anything. She doesn't think, well, why should I do that? She and I suppose how you get out of it in the end is you think, actually, what if I am doing the right thing and I am doing my best, what can go wrong? And actually, I tried it last time when I felt like this, and actually things went well. And I think eventually you realise if you just keep moving forwards, actually it's okay. So you lose the fear almost. I think that's where I've got to. Although I'm always, how much this is about who I am or what I am, I always think I'm one step away from being found out or things going terribly wrong. But just now, several more years down the line than you are, I think, well, it's kind of okay. I don't feel like I don't feel I've got all the answers. I will never feel I've got all the answers, but I kind of feel nothing's gone wrong so far. So just keep doing what you're doing. And I know that doesn't sound very ambitious, but I think that's where I've got to. A lot of the fear, which is real, the environment we work in and we live in is harder than it is for a lot of people. But actually, so far, nothing's gone wrong. So just keep doing it. That is.
It doesn't sound all that glamorous, but it's the reality of it, isn't it?
Just keep
the
showing
reality of it. It's just actually, let's just keep going. So
and don't be scared.
So my mum spoke no English when she came to this country, and she's now a mother of 6 very professional individuals, and is, living the dream in terms of, she came from, they came from wealth when they came from Pakistan, but actually when she started off here, they had pretty much next to nothing, and now is almost, living what she wasn't able to at the beginning. So all the struggles and sacrifices she made, as she says now, are worth it. And she often says to me, when I question that, I don't think I should do it, or, oh, Mama, someone else is probably better going to do this job better, or is more accomplished than I am. And she says, Errum, look at me, if you don't ask, you don't get, or if you don't try, you'll never know. And I think that's always been a huge push for me, because she says, look at all the barriers that I had. Actually, if I just sat there and wallowed about it, then I wouldn't be, you guys definitely wouldn't be where you are, but I wouldn't be where I am either. So it's about pushing. And, I think we've all kind of referenced our parents, but my motivation massively comes from the strength of a woman who needs to get something done is incredible. Like, there is, and I think especially when we bring children into the mix, I think the motivation just goes boom, like it massively increases because now being a mother, I realized actually I could do anything if I needed to, and it's made me appreciate actually all the struggles that I really didn't recognize before that my mum had to go through to get me where I am now. So yeah, I think maybe for me it doesn't have to, yes, Michelle Obama is a massive inspiration, but actually just going back small into actually my own little herd of women around me to say, actually, it's people like my sister or my mum or, my aunts and the barriers that they face, to say, I got it relatively easier compared to those people, because like Lucy said, back then, actually women of color, you didn't see them around. They definitely weren't in positions of power. So it's because of people like you, Lucy, who actually, who pushed down those barriers and just said, well, I'm just going to do it, that we can now be like, oh, actually, no, we do have some inspirational role models up there and we can reach it. I think one of the discussions that, that we've spoken about before was the fact that, Lucy, you went through a period where you didn't feel as if you had those role models, but actually how much has things changed? So we're in what now, in 2020, so 40 years on from when you started, and we're still hearing Liz and Elizabeth saying, well, no, we still don't quite have those role models in place, but we have, and we're still self-motivating. So how, through the passage of time, are Black women still feeling the same that they were even 40 years ago in primary care? And what are we going to do to change that?
I mean, I have to say, I mean, in my career, it's been the two things in parallel: women in primary care, female pharmacists.
Yeah.
I don't mind. When I was young, it was retail pharmacists, and they were all men, and that and pharmacy, was a very, pharmacy is people. It's fascinating because as well as the jobs that we do, we're citizens, aren't we? And pharmacy, in my experience, has parity of esteem now with general practice. People talk about, my mum's pharmacist in a way that years ago you might, and I'm sorry to GP colleagues here, but actually, particularly pharmacy, it's a really, really key part of our frontline health services. So the profession is more prominent than it was. Women are more prominent. And then I guess, so therefore, by de facto, if you start to break down those barriers, then you're just starting to open up a kind of horizon where actually seeing Black women as pharmacists and pharmacists being a fundamental part of our primary care services that we all, it would, to be frank, it's not, that has happened in a generation. That's great, isn't it?
I guess also the question comes to accessibility. So how do we ensure that actually our primary care is accessible to all? What are we doing, in that whole thing of the representation that we feel as if we take on ourselves? Like, how do we ensure that when we're practicing, not only are we actively using our cultural and heritage background and the knowledge that we have to make sure that that patients feel like they can come and speak to you about their issues, how are we also trying to make sure that our colleagues are aware of it? What have your experiences been with, I definitely, so again, I'll talk about, I feel as if I'm talking too much about myself, but when I was in so I worked in Mary Potter, and there was a very diverse population, but there's a very big Pakistani community there. And I was able to use my second language as a way of breaking one of the barriers. So language is a huge barrier, and I was able to speak to women in their 40s, 50s, 60s who actually felt like I haven't been able to speak to my GP in 20 years. So it was huge, and I was able to maybe I was able to use that inherent advantage that I had to make sure that my patient got the best care that they could get. The question is, how do you feel as if you can do that for your patients, but how do you also ensure that your patients, Black female patients, don't just come to you, that they feel that they can also access other people within your practice? So do you feel as if within your role, you're able to upskill your colleagues as well?
Yeah, definitely. So I work in an area, it's quite diverse as well. So you do have a lot of, you do have some Black people living in that area as well. And I suppose sometimes on the phone, they because you're the pharmacist, they don't always assume you're Black. So in person, like, oh, but I take it positively because they identify with you. So already the rapport is there. It's a foundation, isn't it? And with all our patients, we want them to listen to our advice and take it on board for better health outcomes, don't we? So it's just also using your culture, if it's something that they identify with, as a foundation for that relationship with the patient, to give them advice that's tangible to them. So, for example, giving diet advice, I'm not going to talk about pasta, potatoes. I'm going to talk about plantain and yam. That those contain carbohydrates, so cut it down. So you're just giving that advice that is tangible and relevant to them, and that makes things more understandable to them, because quite often as well, if you understand the culture a bit more, you will also understand how they view health professionals. They will come and sit there, yep, but it's almost as a sign of respect to the doctor or to the health professional, but they've not really taken anything on board or understood much. So when you understand that perspective, you're able to break certain barriers and actually really meet them at certain level where you have their attention and you can motivate them and encourage them to take ownership of their own health as well.
I would say, like, piggybacking on that, because you've mentioned Mary Potter is quite diverse. So it's not just about us using our culture as an advantage point. We can also learn from diverse cultures as well. So I know going in, yes, I had familiarity with mainly with the Indian culture, but I didn't really know much about the Pakistani culture. I didn't really know much about the Romani culture. I had a few interactions here and there, but I didn't learn much. So speaking to other colleagues about, I've got a patient, their diet is not really well. This is the type of foods they're talking about, but I'm not quite sure how, and they, like actually speaking to them. I know one of my colleagues, we did had one of the medical students, and I was talking to them about the Pakistani cuisine, and they were like, oh no, actually that's actually quite high in fat because they use ghee and they use this, and traditionally you make with this food. And I was like, what is ghee? Like, we don't use that in my cooking. So learning about that, and obviously even teaching my colleagues about yam, and they're like, oh, what is yam? Like, how does it taste like? What would you describe it as? That's kind of like really, really important. Or especially like I would say the Romani culture, for example, they tend to be a bit reluctant about medical professions, and they always they're not very open. But trying to explain to colleagues, actually, if you break things down and try to start off from where they're coming from, it makes it more receptive than you just going to them and saying, you need to do that. They'll just nod their head and just go home and carry on as they have been. So it's just one of those things. I think working collaboratively, I can't find the word, collaboratively helps. Having conversations as well help. And sometimes admitting that you don't know, like you're actually not going to die because you said you didn't know something, but being willing to also learn as well. So I've been consultations with patients where they will tell me, as we talked about diet, a food, and I'll be like, oh, what ingredients go into it? But break it down, because then I can relate to something in there and then we can talk about it. So that might be, that's another way to go about it.
And you talk about collaboration, it's valuing that person as an individual, isn't it? And the fact that you get an immediate reaction because they're like, oh wait, no, this person's actually interested. So when I'm coming, it's we've spoken about diet and diabetes. I remember in when I was in Mary Potter, I remember there was this group of women who were all diabetic, and they would kind of like eat loads of fruit like mango and grapes and think they were doing a really good job. And it was like trying to explain to them, no, yes, that's healthy, but actually it's got loads of sugar in it. But then there used to be this idea of, well, I don't eat pasta and I don't eat potatoes. I eat roti, right? And roti is chapati. And actually, no, that's bad for you too. But you just haven't, no one's really picked that up because it's a cultural, it's a cultural difference. And it was nice to be able to recognize that and be like, well, actually, I can help you in this small little way just because of the little bit of knowledge that I have. But I think it's exactly what you said. It's starting at a point where that patient is comfortable, and then working at them bit by bit so that you can make sure that they, you get that compliance and you get that rapport with that patient, and they feel as if you really care, and therefore they'll respond to what you're advising them. Do you feel as if, well, I often felt as if, because I came from a minority background, I was always more open to trying to find out and trying to adjust to people of different, of diverse backgrounds, because I felt like, well, actually, if my mum went in, I'd quite want someone to be able to do that for my mum. So yeah, I think that's another advantage, of being. Of having a diverse background, that you almost appreciate the diversity across the board and think, well, actually, what can I do that will make your life or your health a little bit better in a small way. And that brings us to a close for episode 4. We have talked about a really important topic, imposter syndrome, and as I said at the beginning, this is so relevant to all different walks of life. So I hope that you got something out of this. Join us again for episode 5, where we'll be talking about the importance of Black History Month, but also the fact that it's not just about Black History Month, and how we should probably be saluting our sisters no matter what month of the year it is. So I look forward to seeing you again.